Week 0 of college football in the books, and the New Orleans Saints, they have their preseason in the rearview mirror, looking forward to the regular season. Who's the starting quarterback? We'll talk about that and so much more. Coming up, this is the Louisiana Lunch Hour. And welcome, everyone, to the inaugural edition of the Louisiana Lunch Hour podcast, a podcast dedicated to all things Louisiana sports in a nice little bite-sized piece of information, 30 minutes or less. We're going to give you everything you need to know about your favorite teams in the boot. A lot of big stuff coming out of this weekend. And it seems like the perfect time to have the inaugural episode of the podcast because, after all, we just saw the Saints preseason wrap up week 0 of college football, and there were some Louisiana teams, and we'll show some love to them in just a little bit. And appreciate you listening in on Spotify. If you are, go ahead and subscribe today. We give this to you each and every weekday from now until the end of June. We'll probably take some time off in between when things kind of get a little bit hairy in terms of just overall content, but trust me, we'll be giving you as much as we can 5 days a week, 30 minutes or less. You can also check us out on YouTube. Just search Louisiana Lunch Hour. We got some content up there already, and we've also got us up on all other social media platforms. Just search Louisiana Lunch Hour, Facebook, Twitter, or X if you want to call it that, TikTok, Instagram, Threads. I think the only one we're not on yet is Blue Sky. We'll get to that eventually, but we want to get you to the latest news concerning your favorite teams. We got to start off with the New Orleans Saints. They took a tough one to the Denver Broncos, 28-19 in the preseason finale. Game looked competitive in the early goings, but the Saints were outclassed once again by their former head coach, Sean Payton, in this preseason finale. Neither quarterback really shined, and that's going to be a problem as we get ready for week 1 of the season. And I'll break down a little bit more into detail about who could be QB1 on September 7th for the Saints against the Arizona Cardinals in just a little bit. But I got to get to some other stuff from that game, as well as some things that happened over the weekend. Quincy Riley was another highlight for this team in an otherwise middling game to close out preseason. 4 tackles, 2 of which being solos, and a pick late in the ball game. And we also had something interesting happen with week 0 of college football. It's in the books. And 2 teams from Louisiana did take part in the action, namely Nicholls State. And this was a really good ball game for the Colonels. First game under new head coach Tommy Rybecki. He had a really good 20-6 win over Incarnate Word. Deuce Hogan had a really respectable ball game, 221 yards through the air. Got some stuff done on the ground as well. But the highlight was a beautiful 55-yard touchdown pass to start things off on the right foot. It was just a phenomenal pass. I've seen that shared on social media. So hopefully things are looking good for the Colonels as they go into the 2025 season. They'll be taking on the Troy Trojans next, but it's really good to see the Colonels defense came to play. A pick 6 from Ty Marsh, one of 4 turnovers on the afternoon. Definitely was a surprise because Incarnate Word last year was the reigning defending Southland Conference champions. Doing that in your first college football game, it's a feather in the cap for the first-time head coach, especially because that was the first game played on U.S. soil. That's always a really nice kind of feather in your cap as well. Another game that happened last night. Another game that happened on Saturday was the Southern Jaguars. They got blown out by North Carolina Central 31-14. They struggled through the air in the season opener, and the defense fell apart, not necessarily in a bad way, because like when you look at the overall stats, it was fairly close, but the air game for North Carolina Central was a little bit better, and they were able to get the better end of this MEAC SWAC Challenge kickoff game. But you got to give a special shout out to former LSU running back Trey Holly. He had a really great run, taking one to the house on an 80-yard touchdown run. And when you look at the highlight, one guy got a hold of it. Basically, it was almost a shoestring tackle. But once he broke free, he was gone. Nothing short of spectacular for the former LSU standout. Looks like he's got some of the bad things that have happened in the last year behind him, and he's looking forward to playing a lot more ball for the Jags. Next up is going to be Mississippi Valley next week for the Southern Jaguars, and then everybody else is going to be kicking off. We'll talk about that a whole lot more over the course of this week because we got some big ball games: LSU, Clemson, Cajuns, Rice, and so many more. We'll talk about those throughout the week. But I want to get into the main course of this podcast, and that is the Saints preseason finale. Now, the $1 million question, everyone's been trying to figure out the answer to this question since April, and it looks like we won't know the answer for at least a few more days. That said, I don't think we see the QB1 when the Saints play the Cardinals on September 7th will be the same QB1 by the time we get to the end of the season. I think there's a very strong case to be made for both quarterbacks, and obviously Spencer Rattler was the leader in the clubhouse going into Saturday. There is a very clear reason why he played with the ones and Tyler Shuff played with the twos. He was the leader in the clubhouse, but it was a very, very narrow margin. He left a lot to be desired in his performance in the first half, going 5 for 8 for 43 yards. Again, a very small sample size in this one ball game, but it was a very conservative play, high percentage throws. They were more or less dink and dunks, and we didn't even see how he could work in the red zone, only getting 2 field goals and fairly long ones out of the 3 drives he was a part of. Tyler Shuff played fairly better, but still didn't do anything that made me feel like he made significant strides to usurp the position that is presumably ready for Spencer Rattler. It was just a very average performance, but credit to him leading a really nice 12-play drive that carried into the fourth quarter that wound up keeping things close, was pulled after that for Jake Haener, who probably had the worst showing of the 3. And I'll throw this hot take out here, is that Haener is probably going to be back in a lock for the 53-man roster unless they can get a veteran QB to carry the clipboard and help the 2 young quarterbacks develop, because I think it's going to be a very long season. This is a rebuilding campaign. It feels like something that the Saints should have done at least 7-8 years ago, but obviously the Drew Brees' career got a second life and a resurgence with Alvin Kamara coming aboard. That 2017 draft changed a lot of things. That said, it's safe to say they weren't able to parlay that into any further success, especially after the Noah no call, which many to this day still hate. And I get it. But I still feel like this Saints team is only going to go so far this year. And I'm not going to give you my win-loss totals for them until next week. But I will say the expectations are very low, and it's because of a lot of reasons. And the biggest one, I think, is the offensive line health. This Saints team has been snake bit by the injury bug for a hot minute. It feels like since Dennis Allen, hell, even going further back, since Sean Payton was head coaching for the New Orleans Saints. And I'm a firm believer that everything to do with the Saints wheels falling off very quickly after week 3 was because you lost players on the offensive line. You look at it. You had that offense firing on all freaking cylinders in that season opener in week 2 against the Dallas Cowboys. You whipped up on them, stomp a mud hole, walk it dry. I don't think if you lose to the Eagles and you lose one of your key players in the first couple drives, the wheels fall off that quickly. I think you probably were going to lose that game. They were the eventual Super Bowl champions. Makes sense looking back at it. But the point still stands that in 2025, you were seeing more of the same issues. You were seeing more of the same problems. You're losing key players on the line, and that's led to a lot of major issues going back to last season. Quarterback play became inconsistent. Derek Carr got injured, and he had to throw guys to the fire that were nowhere near ready. And we're obviously talking about Spencer Rattler. He looked good, but it wasn't anything like mind-blowing. I think we were kind of just is what it is with him. And the bug continues to affect that key aspect of the game. I think offensive line, and I've said this before in the past on radio shows, is that offensive line play is the biggest reason why you win or lose ball games. I think the battles in the trenches, even like any level of football, especially the highest level, you need to have offensive line continuity. You need to have these guys ready to go and be consistent and have good depth as well. And it continues to affect them. You had Landon Young getting carted off in the game on Saturday due to an ankle injury. This is another body piled on top of losing former LSU Tiger Will Clapp and Nick Saldivari. They're out for the year. And who knows if Trevor Penning will be ready for week 1. Whoever's quarterback 1 to start the season will need to rely on a late career Drew Brees-esque attack. And there's going to be some dink and dunk that they'll need to do. And also, they need to figure out some players that are going to be able to work in that system. And obviously, maybe figure out what they can do with wide receivers, because it's kind of like a hodgepodge of people. I mean, obviously, you got old man Brandon Cooks, 10 years in the league, and I think his career is cooked. But I'll kind of flip over to the defensive side for a little bit here, because I liked what I saw from Quincy Riley. I'll bring him up again. He had a fairly easy interception that had the Houdat faithful excited late in the ball game, which is what you want to see. He's another guy that I'd be fairly surprised if he doesn't make it on the 53-man roster. Again, not a lot of style points on the pick, but I liked what I saw from him on Saturday. Throwing 4 total tackles and a deflection was a solid day for the 4th rounder. Another guy I think we need to talk about is going to be Christian Boyd. Only had 1 tackle, but it was another sack for the young man. He also had one a couple weeks ago, in case you forgot, that resulted in a safety. So he's continuing to show promise. That might be enough to help him keep a spot on this team going into 2025's regular season starting up. And again, we're headed towards the cut date. The cut date is going to be tomorrow at 4 o'clock. Tomorrow, let's go ahead and tease it right now. I will give you some thoughts about who I think should be on that 53-man roster and who should be cut. And then on Wednesday, we'll kind of react to everything on the Saints side of things. But another guy that was in there is Ragin White. That dude, he was on another level, all over the map, wrapped up tackles like he was Thanos collecting Infinity Stones. He had 9 total tackles, 7 solos. Are you kidding me? This guy was nothing short of impressive. Rumble, young man rumble. And I'll throw a bonus on top of this when it comes to the guys I think should be making the 53-man roster. I think we see Devin Neal make that 53-man roster. Rookie out of Kansas just stuck out to me. He had a really good performance, not necessarily the greatest, but I noticed some highlights from him that I was intrigued about, and I think he could edge out somebody like Clyde Edwards-Helaire. Again, I'll have some more thoughts tomorrow's show, more about the final cuts. We'll wrap things up in a nice little bow today. Again, it's a light one, not a whole lot going on. We're just getting ready for game week. And all throughout this week, because it is right before week 1 of the college football season, I'm going to give you some predictions for some of the big teams across the state of Louisiana. And I want to start off with 2 of the better teams from the group of 6. I think 2 teams that a lot of people have high hopes on, namely high hopes on them getting things done when it comes to the college football playoff. I think the odds of them doing that are extremely low. I think I've got a better shot of being named a head coach of a college football team than those 2 programs making the college football playoff. I would love to be wrong. But I'll start with the Vermilion and White, and I'll start things out on the gates with a hot take here. The Cajuns have every chance to start the season 4-1. I think there's no excuses, because you start off the season this Saturday against Rice, and you play McNeese at home at the brand new Our Lady of Lourdes Stadium. So you have those 2 games. Those seems like very easy victories for the Vermilion and White. Now, the next week, you've got Mizzou on the road. That's going to be a tough game. I wish they played them in 2020, but COVID did COVID things. Hot take, I think the Cajuns in 2020 would beat Mizzou if not for the pandemic throwing a monkey wrench. And then again, it would have been the equivalent of what the Cajuns did to Iowa State, but still would have been a lot cooler to see it that way. Then you have Eastern Michigan. I think it's on paper a good win. And then the defending Sunbelt champs Marshall, which is a twist because half the team basically jumped ship to Southern Miss alongside their head coach. It's once you get to October is when things get sticky. JMU and Southern Miss feel like losses to me. And Troy is a toss-up because, and again, I think it's more that middle of the pack when it comes to the Sun Belt Conference. It is completely like no holds barred. You don't know where things are going to go. So I think Troy's a toss-up. Then you have South Alabama, Arkansas State, Texas State on their Sun Belt Conference farewell tour, and they'll wrap the season against UL Monroe. So all things considered, when I look at the Cajun schedule, I think there is a really good chance that 9-3 is completely in the realm of possibility. That does not get you a college football playoff spot, but gets you a spot in the Sun Belt Conference Championship game, which I think should be the goal for this team for the next several years. And I'm hoping things continue to go in that right direction for this program and they get into a really nice bowl game that is not the New Orleans Bowl. Like, I am tired of seeing, that was something I saw the other day that bugged me, was the fact that the Cajuns are continuing to be projected by ESPN to be in the New Orleans Bowl time and time again just blows my mind. But we go to New Orleans to talk about Tulane. They're riding an incredible wave of momentum from the last couple seasons. John Sumrall is aiming to continue that for his second season. It'll be tough sledding because you've got a really rough slate to start off the 2025 season. I think you go 2-2 to start this season. You win your first two, then you lose your next two because, again, it's a really tough schedule. You start off with Northwestern. I think you can win that game, but it'll be close. Then you have South Alabama on paper win. I think Duke is going to be this Green Waves team's first loss, and then you play Ole Miss. That rivalry game is always going to be tough. I think that Tulane loses that. Then they've got Tulsa, East Carolina, Army might be another game they wind up losing as well, because Army's just a tough team. UTSA, Memphis, you got Florida Atlantic, Temple, and then close out with Charlotte. I think the absolute ideal, not the optimist, but the person that believes in just neutrality, I would say 8-4 is where this team is going to go. Again, won't be a berth in the college football playoff, but I feel like there's something special going on at Yeoman Stadium, and hopefully it can be built up and we see things continue to grow for this program, even in the middle of what I believe is the most tumultuous period in college football, because we saw something last week, and I'll wrap up with this. Revolving around the news about the SEC going to 9 conference games, so that now leaves only 3 games left in your schedule that you have to book. And one of those is going to be occupied by a group of 4 team based off of the SEC scheduling starting in 2026. So that's going to be 10 games that are completely off the docket. Now, obviously, you're going to get your body bag game, but where does the other one lie? And I'll also throw this kind of log onto the fire, and it's a hot take. I firmly believe we need to see in 2026, and I'm just going to go statewide here, I think LSU needs to figure out a rotational thing for at least one of their non-con games. I feel like it makes sense to do that. Is you got to have at least one game. Why not rotate between all of the Louisiana teams, or figure out a way to do every 4 years you play a combination of these teams? Cajuns, La Tech, Tulane, McNeese, and you could do easily just McNeese, Southern. I think Southern would probably be, Southern or Grambling would replace McNeese, I think, in my mind. But if you want to kind of have that Louisiana feel to it, I'm always going to be down with scheduling at least one team from the state of Louisiana going forward. Just a hot take that I have there. But again, in college football, we're seeing more and more the haves continuing to stack up their case to make sure the have-nots do not have a seat at the table. And it's a horrible thing to see with college football, because, I mean, why wouldn't you want to have some of the smaller teams make it and have a case to say, hey, we want to be in this race? But lo and behold, apparently that's not what the programs that are running things at the highest level possible, like the SEC, the Big Ten, the Big 12, and the ACC want. They want to see it just be the same teams every single year in the playoff, which just defeats the purpose of the entire thing. I'm going off on a tangent here, but I feel like the college football landscape, it's changing, and in the worst ways possible. But appreciate you listening into the Louisiana Lunch Hour podcast. We're dropping one each and every day right around noon. So make sure you stay subscribed, turn on your download notifications, and we can Listen to us on the go. You don't have to use up any data or anything. If you're out at lunch, you don't have the Wi-Fi hooked up, you can listen to us anywhere, anytime, any place. We're also up on YouTube. Just search at Louisiana Lunch Hour. Go ahead and subscribe to us. We've got some exclusive content going up over there pretty frequently, so make sure you get in on the action today. Appreciate you listening. We'll be back tomorrow with another edition of the Louisiana Lunch Hour podcast.